June 26th meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals to order. I'm Jennifer Matthews and I am the Vice Chair and I am chairing this evening. Alex Sharp is absent. So call to order. Gentlemen, please state your names for the record.
David Kine.
Ron Rattle.
Chris Furry.
Okay.
We're all here.
We're all here. Minus Mr. Sharp. Just a few comments. We're going to have a reporter for the second hearing that we have, the second public hearing that we have. So she's not recording right now, and when she does record, I will let you know. We do have the standard recording going on from the video over here, and we've got a voice recorder going to capture everything here. So what you say is going to be heard and is going to be counted. Okay, and then we have to look at the agenda and adopt it. Do I have a motion to any amendments to the agenda or to adopt
I
it?
move that we adopt it with one amendment. Since we have all this other stuff going on, let's put the minutes from the last meeting down right before, after the public hearing. With that, I move the adoption of the agenda as amended.
A second to that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we will put those at the end after E or?
Yeah. There is no E, so we're E.
Okay. So we will begin with the public hearing for the SUP, the special use permit number 190401 and concurrently SUP 190402 Golden Springs LLC. Is there anyone here to represent that? Please come forward. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Now, please state your name and state it. Oh, no, we don't do that this time. State your name so for the record.
Matthew Wayne Neislinger.
Okay. Now, be seated. So, please tell us about your application and your proposal.
I have submitted two applications for two houses on my property. One is 63. The other one is 117, I believe. These two houses are next to my main residence, and they're empty. So, just want to generate some revenue through Airbnb. I have a tasting room on my property. I have a farm winery license, and it just makes sense to be able to provide accommodations.
You have a tasting room?
Mm-hmm.
So, you have a vineyard?
I have a vineyard. I don't have a winery.
Okay. And so, how many acres do you have in vines?
8.
And are you licensed to have the tasting room?
Oh, yes.
So, with your proposed tourist homes, how often would you, how many people would one or the other accommodate? How often do you suppose that you would?
Each one has 2 bedrooms.
So it's 2 bedrooms each?
So most likely Friday night, Saturday night.
And so 4 persons per?
Each one has a master bedroom, and the second bedroom has 2 bunk beds, I guess you would call it. So probably no more than 4.
So 4 persons each.
Mm-hmm.
Some questions?
I don't.
I mean, they're all contained within the property.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They're all on, it's all one big tract of land?
Mm-hmm.
And
I've submitted
How
it.
big is it?
571 acres.
And they all share the same access road, the main entrance? They all
Yes.
come in through there?
They're not visible from any neighbor. Couldn't hear them from any neighbor. Only me, only the big house there in the middle.
As part of the BZA process, we opened it for a public hearing. So is there anyone who'd like to speak to these 2 applications? I still want to call it High Meadows, Golden Springs. Seeing none, then I'll close the public hearing. Any further comments from board members? Does anyone want to make a motion with this?
I move that we approve.
What about the planning commission? What did they do?
They reviewed the application and suggested that it proceed and had no question.
Well, I'm looking, it says table action at this time when health department, I can't read it,
The health
Comments
department,
received.
comments received
Then,
to the BZA for public hearing.
the health
So,
department hadn't inspected the septic tanks yet,
uh,
so they came out, inspected the septic tanks and asked them.
where is that?
can you show us the document?
Yeah. I submitted those during the summers.
They're in the file,
They should be in the file.
they're in the file.
Oh, yeah, here it is. Drawing.
We're supposed to be doing this. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Here, I saw it.
So this was from,
That's one of them.
uh-huh,
And then, she has maybe a book on there?
Yeah, they're both in here.
Yeah.
okay.
They're all in one file, that's confused me.
No, it's two files there, isn't it?
Yeah, but one doesn't have anything in it.
Oh,
Anybody want to read these?
Ron?
Administrator Gobb, so.
So it's been approved for septic, we know that the road is okay, and so then we would have, we usually put conditions on this, so 2 bedrooms, 4 persons each, so for the 2, a total of 8.
I think we ought to do it one at a time.
One at a time?
Because otherwise we're going to have confusion. They're 2 separate
Okay.
filings, and that's sort of my question about it. I mean, if it's only going to be 8 people, I guess it doesn't matter, but, I mean, at some point it goes from a tourist home to something else if there's too many people. But if it's going to be limited, I guess not, but still, I think we ought to consider with them in order.
Okay.
Pass them, make the findings that we have to make, and
So for our,
so the first one is 1904-01,
so let's read the
which
file.
is, I don't know how to differentiate it. Why don't you show us which one's which, so we know on this overhead.
'63 is the yellow log cabin. You have that picture somewhere?
Which one?
63.
It's the wall cabin.
Yeah, the yellow log cabin.
63 then. Oh, the address, gotcha. Okay, so that's number 01, right? Right?
That's 63.
Right, so that's 1904-01.
And this is 122.
Okay, actually, I just thought of the questions that we have been asking is that, number one, is there phone service in these cabins
No.
other than cell service?
Just sell.
Okay. Is that, and what cell service do you have on the property?
I have
Is-
AT&T.
is-
Personally, I
is
have
it-
AT&T.
No, but is there cell service for a variety of servers?
Is there cell service? So we get our cell service through Wi-Fi. So I have Piedmont Broadband who sends the signal down to the house.
Do you have that in the cabins?
No.
Our concern there is that if a renter has a medical emergency or there's a fire or whatever, that they need some means of
So you're just
contacting
asking,
emergency.
does regular cell service work at those houses. It's 63, yes. AT&T does. I don't know about Verizon or any other carriers.
See, that can be a safety issue in that you want to ensure that,
Yeah.
you know, people can, you know, summon, you know, emergency services, police, fire, rescue, whatever.
Right.
And also, we've been asking for fire extinguishers
Oh, yeah.
and smoke detectors.
Yep.
Are they installed, or will they
The
be?
smoke detectors are yes, the fire extinguishers not yet. I was waiting for this before I made the investment.
But you were told about that,
I wasn't, I was doing that from my own liability.
and insurance?
I have fire extinguishers in all my barns. Houses that we use.
I was going to say, I personally, knowing now that the people would be sitting there and not having
No signal?
any phone, you know, potentially not having any phone service for emergencies or whatever, to me is a problem. That, you know, if nothing else, you know, landline needs to be in there for them to utilize. Because that's, I mean, it's Rappahannock, but some phones work, some phones don't, but it's a bad time to find out your phone doesn't work.
So I had CenturyLink in my main house, which was the only phone service through there, and it didn't work. That's the reason I got rid of it. We got Piedmont Broadband to send me a Wi-Fi signal for my cell phone.
But that is just for you. They said,
Yeah, that's, what I'm saying is that CenturyLink didn't work. There's about 6 of those pedestals from the main road up to that first yellow house that are no good. That's the problem. So I can't answer if Verizon works, so I can tell you AT&T does.
But that is a limitation, and something that we've asked, I think in the past 6 or 8 months, we've asked anyone coming through with the tourist home, do you have some sort of communication to the
So,
outside?
the answer to that would be get a walkie-talkie that would go to my house.
Would you be on premises all the time that they're there?
I am most always on the farm. I would say 98% of the time. And if not me, there's always somebody in the house.
I would be reluctant to pass on it without knowing what type of, you know, reliable service is going to be available to the
Yeah.
folks that rent them. And it's, when you need it, you need it.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, there are ways of doing it.
Yeah, the option would be to put Wi-Fi, have Piedmont send the Wi-Fi signal down there
To each of them?
to each of the houses. But that's the only option, frankly, that I know of. A landline, it's not going to work. CenturyLink is.
Well, are you willing to do that?
Oh, yeah, I put Wi-Fi in there.
Okay, and the other thing is there's usually a guest book that explains how they, you know, call 911 or what they do in an emergency if something goes wrong. So will you have a guest book that tells them where the fire extinguishers are and the smoke detectors and
Sure, I can do
how to get in touch with you and the typical rules?
Right.
Did we come up with a list of what they needed to have in that book? We talked about it.
Well, on the fire extinguishers, because in the past, the wording was a working fire extinguisher, which I've always made the example, is could be a bucket of water. But it's a 2A 10 BC is the accepted, you know, standard in a situation like that.
Okay.
Do you know what that is?
Fire extinguisher?
You know what 2A10 BC?
I'm assuming it's the same one used in hospitals and healthcare facilities?
I'm just asking if you know what.
It's, yeah, it's a, you know, it's a standard, you know, I mean, you go in and you buy it,
It's usually red.
it's about red, it's about like
Yeah.
that tall, it's that big around.
The black thing on it. Hold the pin and aim it at the base of the hole.
ABC.
No, 2A10 BC.
Yeah, the rule is ABC.
Well, yes, yes,
Gotcha.
yes.
I forget. It's
That's
A
3 different types of fire.
something something.
That's my career.
All right, so in lieu of our most recent discussion, do we have a motion for the SU 190401, the first one?
I move that we grant that to the board.
Granted, with what conditions?
Outside communication.
but we will hold the issuing of the permit till that's validated, correct?
Yes,
Till he submits it to the zoning administrator?
till he submits it to the zoning
Okay.
administrator.
That's why we're writing this down.
Yeah, you write them down, right? So reliable outside communications. Smoke detectors,
Right.
okay?
Converting smoke detectors and 2A, 10BC, fire
All right.
extinguisher.
No, have we already put those in, direct wire, those
The,
smoke detectors?
no, they're not direct wire.
In a house that size, the battery operated ones
It's okay.
would be sufficient.
Book.
And
The last one's the book.
the directions book.
Did you say you have a list of things that you wanted in that book? Or just common sense things?
Some of it's common sense,
We
but how
have
to
a-
get in touch with you, how to get in touch with the sheriff,
Right?
911. Michelle, do we have that list?
Not with me.
You have, so you
I have
have
an office.
Oh, would you just email that to me?
Sure,
Thank you.
absolutely.
And then, so 4 persons for the bed, for the cottage known as 63, the 190401. And what else was your,
Yeah, I'll second the motion with the conditions.
okay, so would the secretary please read back the motions with the conditions?
Reliable outside Wi-Fi submitted to zoning administrator. 2A, 2,
2A10BC.
right. So how many of them, 1 or 2?
Right,
I'm
just
confused.
one. On those, they're just single story.
Okay.
And they're wall mounted?
1's 2, 4. I'll have 2 for that one.
Okay.
So, 2 fire extinguishers, smoke detectors in each room, or what'd you say? In one, how many smoke detectors in each bedroom?
Yeah, they can be, they can be the battery operated ones.
Okay, but in each bedroom, right? In each bedroom, right?
Hallway.
Just tell me, isn't it?
Hallway.
Yeah, by code, they're supposed to be, actually by code, there's supposed to be one in every bedroom and one in the hallways outside.
Okay.
And then the.
Book of instructions and max 4 persons, 2 rooms. Do you want to put a time limit on? Or do you want to limit it to his ownership of the property? I certainly recommend that we start doing that because we're about to find out, if you don't put it on there, it goes on forever.
All right, so we'll
And,
limit it to his ownership.
Okay. So that's condition E. This is Golden Springs. And what relationship are you to Golden Springs?
Manager. Owner, manager, correct.
So do you own it?
100%.
All right. That owns the land, or that owns the, is it a separate, that owns the property?
Golden Springs owns the property.
Okay.
It's an LLC.
So the permit goes in one.
So what do you want to say about what if he sells the LLC? Do you want to put a change of ownership of the LLC more than, I don't know, some percent? That's what they usually do.
Or change it, on the land or the LLC.
So, what do you want to say?
None of that's restricted.
More than 50%, more than 20%? I don't know.
You decide.
Me? I'll decide. Okay, I'll say more than 20%.
20%.
So if your ownership goes below 80%, you go, whoever it is, the
Has to come
LLC's
back.
got to come back.
Come back.
Okay. That's the motion.
So we have the motion. Do we have a second to the motion?
Yep.
Do we need to read it, or we kind
In
of
fact,
read it?
yeah, we better read back, that's fine.
All right, vote.
New policy.
Because that's part of the new policy.
All right. So reliable outside Wi-Fi, a proof of reliable outside Wi-Fi submitted to the zoning administrator. 2A, 10BC, fire extinguisher. Smoke detectors in each bedroom and hallway. Book of instructions per ZA. Maximum 4 persons, 2 rooms, and limited to the ownership by Golden Springs, and if there's a change of ownership more than 20% in the membership of the LLC,
It has to come back.
it has to come back or terminate.
Yeah, I'll second that.
So that's the motion. Who made, you made the original?
Yes.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
So we have 3 ayes and abstains, so that one passes. All right, we will now discuss SUP number 190402, and that's known as 158,
122.
122. And that's a 2-bedroom, a 2-story
So
facility.
that's a 1-story,
That's
2-bedroom.
So that one we just did was 2
2 stories.
Okay. Do we have a motion that would mirror?
I will make a motion that we pass it to mirror the conditions on the.
Can you flip that, can you flip that? You can't do right or left?
Good, we're not going backwards. That's good.
All right, so we have a motion with that. We have a second to the motion.
Who, did Ron make it first?
Yeah, I made a motion.
I'll second that.
So a second by Byrd. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstention? So 3 ayes and abstention, so. Your work here is completed, but you'll need to talk with Michelle. Maybe make an appointment with her, because I know she's been pretty busy recently.
And submit all that stuff, and then when you do submit it, then you get the permit.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll fill in.
Just give us a second. I need a second.
Okay, I got a sweater.
Does the secretary swear?
I guess because you don't know what the wording is and all that.
Oh my God, awesome.
Do we get to keep these?
It's the,
Hey, don't mix it up with this.
I will not, it's a little bit different.
Oh, I'll get our own.
Well, I keep these.
I've been signing.
You should have this in
Okay, raise your hand. Do you swear that you will accurately transcribe these proceedings of the Board of Zoning Appeals of Rappahannock County?
I do.
Thank you. All right, we're going to be hearing the a revocation of the Harmony Hall Bed and Breakfast LLC, and that's number 28-52F. There are several points that I'd like to make about this, is that we do have a recorder going.
Sure.
Huh? A recorder.
Recorder.
A recorder going. So thank you. And the other thing is I would like to remind everyone that our purpose here is that we are the Board of Zoning Appeals is to determine whether or not there has been non-compliance with the terms of or conditions of the special use permits that were issued by this BZA in January of 2012 and in October 2013. That including but not limited to, there were 2 conditions, a maximum of 3 bedrooms and 6 persons, and then condition 2, no for-profit events or rentals of other spaces in that structure or on the property. And we are to review whether or not to revoke one or the other or both of these special use permits. So this is not a hearing about expanding the number of bedrooms. It's to look at what was issued and has that been in compliance. So I'd like to, there will be 2 parties who will speak. One will be the zoning administrator who issued the revocation letter, and then the second will be the appellant, and that will be Mr. Trainer? Did I say it right this time?
Yes, you did. You got it.
And the Hendersons.
Henderson's.
somehow or another I get my words twisted up here. So the zoning administrator can speak first.
Swear.
I don't think I have to swear.
You gotta swear everybody on the
Do you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And state your name clearly
Michelle Summers,
and your position
zoning administrator.
for Rappahannock County.
Yes, ma'am. It was brought to my attention that Harmony Manor Skyline Vineyard Inn was operating at running 5-bedroom bed and breakfast. I sent a violation letter notifying them that this was in violation of their special use permit. They received the letter, came in, we met and discussed the history, what the violation was. And going back through the files, I followed up with an email to Mr. and Mrs. Hendrickson outlining that due to their previous permit, in order to obtain the 4th and 5th bedroom, they needed to complete A and B conditions that were in the permit, which was VDOT approval of the entrance of Clark Lane off 211, which they received and they provided me a copy with. And that the turnouts along Clark Lane between 211 and their property, there was turnouts every 300 feet that needed to be installed, and that had not been completed. So the 4th and 5th bedroom could not be rented out. They assured me that they had changed the reservation system where they may offer 5 bedrooms, but they only book 3 at a time. So, to remain in compliance with their permit.
Okay, and anything that can you say about the events? Or you're not going to address that one?
No.
Any questions for her right this minute?
Is this Exhibit E that they filed with their stuff? I mean, your letter that you said the notice of violation is this March 6th letter?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you read through the advertising for the on-site or the online advertising for the site?
Yes.
And
It's been a while, but I have.
right, but it did appear that
It did appear.
they were offering 5 rooms.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Byrd? Wait, but I'll let you ask a question. He wants to ask another one.
Maybe one of them. When you say you don't have anything to say about the events, did you see those on the webpage about events?
Yes.
And what did you see?
I believe what I
I mean, what's in the letter?
referenced in my letter was weddings, just general events.
What if anything did they say when they came in about events?
I believe that they were unaware that they were prohibited from doing them.
According to we've got so many pieces of paper up here in front of us, because there was a stipulation in the original,
I've got it. It's this Exhibit B, I think. Is this the original permit?
that there was a,
Yes.
because originally there was the 2 bedrooms, 4 people, and the bed and breakfast were the owners and they were the innkeepers. And then the second was no for-profit events or rentals or other spaces on the structure of the property. I had read that earlier.
Correct.
And they did not know that.
I believe they were unaware of that.
Well, that's what they said, right?
Yes.
And when was that meeting, then? After your March 6th letter, when did you meet with them approximately?
I believe you have a copy of my email back to them.
No, I'm looking at what they filed.
Tuesday, April
They,
9th.
we met on March 21st.
So you said the 6th, and then you got back and forth, and then you said that one on the 26th.
I said that this email was a follow-up on April 9th of our meeting on March 21st.
Okay, March 26th.
We'll make this in.
It's not in there?
Should be in the file. Okay. That's the agenda
Hmm?
information.
It's on board docs.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure it's in the
Sure.
record of the hearing.
Any further questions?
So I'm gonna make that exhibit 3. Not at this time, I mean, we may call it back after we hear the other side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Henriksons, would you come forward, or your attorney?
No. He's not testifying.
We've got a lot of electronics up here. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, please state your name
Carl Henriksen,
and where you live.
65 Park Lane.
And so tell us about your response to the letter.
We received a letter of cease and desist from Michelle, and it mentioned that we were renting more than five bedrooms, and we were holding events. To the first point, we were a little surprised because we had and we showed Michelle the drawings of bump outs that were in, have been installed. And so the piece of paper that we had was the special exception or special use permit that said 3 bedrooms if these 2 conditions are exist. And those 2 conditions were the highway department approval for the entrance and the construction of the bump outs. So we saw the construction of the bump outs, saw the approval from the highway department, and off we went. The 5 bedrooms. We got the cease and desist.
Oh, excuse me, when was that? What, off we went, when?
We bought the property October 15, 2017.
So had you been to see the zoning administrator when you bought the property? to
Yes,
say-
I did.
And was it
David?
David Dameron?
Yeah.
Okay.
What date did you say that was?
I have no idea.
No, what date, what did you say? you
October
bought?
15.
But it's my understanding you didn't buy the property, you bought the LLC, right?
That's correct.
So the entity that owned it was Harmony Manor B&B LLC.
That's correct.
right? And it still is, that's who got the permit,
That's
the
correct.
second permit.
That is correct.
Just so we're clear, okay. So the Fort's got the first permit in
That's
their
correct.
own name,
That's correct.
and then they transferred the real estate to the LLC, right?
I have no idea I have no idea how the property got into the LLC.
But the property's now owned. When you bought it, the property was owned by the LLC.
That is correct.
And you and your wife didn't buy the property, you bought some shares in the LLC.
We bought the LLC. That is correct.
Okay, and how many shares of the LLC do you own now?
Donna owns 50% and I own 50%.
And how many does Mr. Ford own, if any?
None.
So between the two of you, 100%.
Absolutely.
So that's what happened on October 15, 2017?
Thereabouts, yes.
Okay. And so when you say, so you thought you were okay, so off we went, that's what you mean
Yeah, we just
shortly after October?
But we just started advertising rooms.
And
then
you're advertising, how many rooms?
5. We've always been advertising
And how many were you renting?
5 until we got the cease and desist from Michelle, because that was a bit of a surprise. And we went and visited with her and I said, what's going on? And she said, oh. And so we had a conversation and she said,
He
no.
said, oh, or you said, oh?
I said, oh.
Oh, okay. Oh,
So, with that meeting with Michelle, we both concluded, Donna and I and Michelle, that we should be renting only 3 rooms.
that's this March
That's correct.
21st, 2019 meeting.
That is correct.
And you had nothing in writing from David Dameron saying
No.
5?
So when you bought the property, you were unaware of the letter that had been written on June 20th of 2016?
No, I was not aware
From
of
Deborah
that.
Kaiser?
I was not aware of that.
that was not, no one made you aware of that in
No.
the real estate deal, or it
No.
was?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't real estate, deal, was it?
No, it's correct. So that issue, I may have an issue with the previous owner, or I may, but that's, that's something I might take up with him.
Which previous one?
The Fords,
Oh, the LLC.
that's correct.
Okay.
That's what we're talking about here, the LLC.
Right, okay. I just want to make sure it's clear on the record what we're talking about.
So once we had the meeting with Michelle, we set the system, the reservation system, we still advertise 5 rooms. But we leave it to, as soon as we get to 3 rooms rented, we mark the rest of them sold.
That's what?
We mark the rest of them as sold,
Unavailable.
unavailable. And so when the John Doe public looks at it, they see 5 rooms being sold out, but only 3 have been rented. The other 2 are vacant.
And that's been going on since April or May?
Since
March.
March 21st, when we had that meeting. We immediately started initiating that process and corrected it. And that's the way we've been running it ever since.
Okay.
But you were still advertising the whole house as being for rent also.
We have that on there, but it never is, and I use that when Don and I want to take some time off. We just mark the whole house as sold. We want to go to the beach for a weekend, for example.
No, I mean, on your advertising, you advertise as having the whole house available for rent. And it lists 10 to 12 people.
I think that's all been taken down.
Not as of this afternoon.
Okay. So, but if the only time we have a whole house rental is when Don and I mark it as sold, so that we can take a weekend off.
Is there a way to document the number of rooms you have
Absolutely.
rented?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, in our presentation, we have that.
So you'll go into that? In the materials that we're providing to you, that is an exhibit to memorandum. Yes.
Can you generate that for the previous period?
The previous,
Well, prior to March 21, can you do the
Yeah.
same kind of,
I think so, yeah.
produce the same kind of records of who stayed and how many guests you had and so forth? You can do that. And did the previous LLC operator was Randall Ford?
Yes.
Kimberly, or both of them, I don't
They
know.
divorced.
Maybe so, but who was the manager before you took over?
I have no idea.
Well, didn't you look at the books and records when you,
Not from that context.
okay, so did you have a new reservation system than what they had, or did you take over the same reservation
No,
system?
we
they already
implemented
had?
our own new reservation system.
And do you have the records from prior to October 15, 2017 available to you?
We did.
Okay, and from that, could you tell how many rooms were rented on the various times?
That was a completely manual system, so it could be, but it's a bit cumbersome.
Well, but you could generate.
I could, yes.
Okay. And what other than the reservation part, I mean, I don't know, I never stayed with B&B, I don't think. So is there like a register where the people sign in when they get there? Like a hotel has? I mean, is there a book where they sign in with their name and
No.
address? And they don't, they just
No.
show up.
They just show up, that's
How
right.
do you know it's really them?
Credit card.
Their credit card. They've already paid for it.
So you don't have any, so there's no register?
No, per se. I have a register, I can tell you who's been renting the rooms.
But based on the credit card payment and all that, and you can do that for the period prior to when you took over the LLC? Okay. And
For the period prior to when you took over the LLC?
Oh, no, I can, it's all paperwork, but I can, yes, I can show you the paperwork. What Kim was doing,
who?
Kim,
That was Mrs. Ford.
Let's let him testify. You know, you watch my cousin Vinny when he says, this is whatever name is in the back and only. Go ahead.
what Kim was doing was taking all the reservations manually. So there's a piece of paper for every registration that she took.
Since 2012, whenever they got the original permit.
That's correct.
And you have all those pieces of paper?
I do indeed.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so we've gone through the,
Well, that's part, I want to go to the events part, but I'll let you all ask your questions about this.
okay.
Well, fine, do you want to say something?
May I speak
Yes.
to the events? Just good evening, I'm Brian Prater, to reiterate, and thank you for having us here tonight. And I just wanted to repeat some of the things that he was saying. And that when he met with the then zoning administrator regarding the special use permits, he was seeking an interpretation as to how many bedrooms that could be rented. At that point was when he showed the site plan and was informed that,
Time out, council. First of all, when he, you mean Mr.
Yes.
Hendrickson? Okay, and what site plan, which
the
site?
site plan that he referenced earlier that showed the turnouts that had been constructed along Clark Lane.
Right.
And at that point, he was informed that 5 bedrooms could be rented per night. And in good faith reliance upon that,
He was informed how?
verbally,
Since-
What do you mean by verbally? You mean orally?
yes.
Okay.
And in good faith reliance on that, the
There's no such thing as good faith reliance on something that's not in writing under 15.2, 23,
in good faith
That's
reliance
one of my
upon,
big lessons here, sir.
in good faith reliance
I
upon
have 2 cases going on now.
Those-
Not the same thing, so I know how you feel.
on that determination that he was told proceeded, the bed and breakfast proceeded to rent 5 bedrooms. Keep 5 bedrooms open and advertise 5 bedrooms. And it did that up until the point that it received the notice of violation and then subsequently met with the zoning administrator. At which point, it agreed with the zoning administrator and realized that it could not rent 5 bedrooms.
Who's it now?
The bed and breakfast.
Okay.
The bed and breakfast did not rent more than 3 bedrooms in any given night after that point, March 21st. And we provided in our memorandum and exhibits evidence supporting that. And
That's the block rooms.
that would be an example. And there is nothing in the special use permit that prohibits how many bedrooms are advertised. It just prohibits that 3 bedrooms, a maximum of 3 bedrooms. This allows customers to pick and choose which bedrooms they would like to rent based on price point, personal preference. But upon the 3rd bedroom for any night being rented, that's the last bedroom, and that has occurred since then. And for that fact, we believe that the bed and breakfast is not in violation of the special use permit conditions. And then I'm more than willing to continue on to the events of that if you are letting me.
Well,
If you have any questions for me about the number of rooms.
I don't have any more questions about that.
Matthew?
You did have a means of documenting how many, the fact that only 3 rooms have been rented at any one point in time. And that was since March of,
Absolutely.
So if you look there, and Carl can correct me if I'm wrong, that in there where the full column, 2/3 of the way to the right on the left, there's 3 light blue colored rooms. The rows represent all the rooms, and 2 black colored rooms. When the 3 rooms were rented, which represent the blue, the website shows that all rooms are booked, hence the black, that those rooms are no longer available to be rented. And that is the document that we provided.
And I have, in our conversation with Michelle, come up anytime and see. I'll open the books, take a look at it. As a matter of fact, I would encourage you to do that, because there has to be some level of confidence that we're doing what we say we're doing.
Have there been any full house rentals
None,
in that?
since we've opened up, none.
And I would add that more evidence to the fact that they are only renting 3 bedrooms is that they are have filed an application for a special use permit to expand it to 5 bedrooms, should you all approve that. And that is further evidence that they only have and realize that they are permitted to rent 3 bedrooms, spending time and money to seek the county's approval, the Board of Zoning Appeals approval, to allow the 4th and 5th bedroom.
Mr. Byrd, do you have any questions?
No.
I don't either. So you said that you had some documents and evidence that you wanted to speak to for the events, because that was the second condition, that no for-profit events or rentals or other spaces in structural or on property. So just a second, Mr. Hendrickson, you said that that was something that did not get conveyed to you, that you did not know that from the LLC?
That is correct.
Okay, so then he has more information.
That which wasn't conveyed to him about the events?
Yes, he said that earlier.
There's 2 SUPs.
Mhm.
The first one that dealt with the 2 bedrooms and mentioned the events. The second one dealt with the 3 bedrooms, I don't know the numbers, but dealt with the 3 bedrooms and the bump outs and VDOT approval of the access point on 211. I only had the first one. I went and asked David if he had a copy of the first one with the 2 bedrooms, and he could not find a copy of it. So,
To clarify, you said you only had a copy of the first one, and I believe you meant to
I'm in
say
the second one, right, I'm working backwards. The first one I saw was the 3 bedroom.
But the condition for the no for-profit rentals would have continued on from 2012, correct?
If I can speak to that, please. We have a farm winery license, and we have not been holding events up there per se. We've been holding tastings, and that's a by right use in an agricultural zone for a farm winery. We have had, part of the reason for buying the property, among others, but part of the reason is that we've been running the tasting room, and we're running into situations where we're getting larger crowds than we can accommodate there, so.
Where?
Yeah, it's good.
That Little Washington Winery, it's an adjacent property.
And it's owned by another LLC, right?
No, it's owned by Don and I,
Personally?
personally.
Okay, and what's Little Washington Winery LLC?
That is the entity that we operate, but it does not own any real estate.
Okay. And it doesn't own the B&B property either?
It does not, that's correct.
And who holds the ABC license?
Little Washington Winery,
LLC?
yes.
All right. And so what's the relationship between you and your wife, Donna Hendrickson, and Little Washington Wineries LLC? You own 100% of that?
Both of us do, yes.
50/50?
That's correct.
And who's the manager of that?
Don and I,
Both of you are co-managers of that?
yeah.
Okay. And so that LLC doesn't own any real estate?
That is correct.
And it's the entity that has the ABC license?
That is
for the
correct.
winery? Okay. The B&B doesn't have a winery or ABC license, does it?
It does. And the B&B does not, that's correct. That is correct.
First you said it does, and then you said it's good.
Well, no,
The Harmony Manor B&B LLC does not have any license from Alcoholic Beverage Control.
that is correct.
And it doesn't have any interest in the land where the winery is located.
The
Isn't that right?
B&B does not have any interest, that's correct.
Okay. So I want to move on to, we're done with that, to these events. Like, for example, on the webpage, there was some kind of meeting of Porsche owners in April of 2016,
That was a tasting.
but that happened at 65 Clark Lane,
That's
right?
absolutely correct.
All right, and how many people attended that?
I think we had 30 people there,
And how many cars were there?
15,
15?
right. I didn't count.
I did. I stopped counting at 24 and I didn't see all the cars. And I was just counting Porsches.
Okay.
So you admit there was more than 25 cars there?
I have no idea, because I didn't count them.
Okay. But you were there?
I was there.
Okay. And did those people stay at the B&B?
No, they did not.
Well, where did they go overnight?
I have no idea.
None of them stayed at the B&B?
None of them.
So that was in April of 16 or 17?
I can't remember. You were there, so I don't know.
I mean, well, how long have you been operating the B&B? Did you operate it before you owned it?
No.
Okay, so the Porsche event was after you owned it. So it was after October of
It was after
2017?
October 15, that's correct.
October 15, 2017.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
And how many Porsche events have you had then? I mean, how many times have you had? Just this year? And do you know if Mr. Ford and Mrs. Ford or the LLC had such events there prior to that?
I have no idea.
Well, how did it come to be that you had this Porsche event or hosted it there? How did that happen?
Because we have pulled in the first 2 floors of the basement and the first floor under the Little Washington Winery's ABC license.
What do you mean by pulled in?
Virginia ABC allowed us to redraw the lines for the boundary because it's an adjacent property. And they have incorporated the property in the first 2 floors of Harmony Banner B&B LLC into the Little Washington Winery ABC license.
Do you have any documentation of any of that?
I absolutely do.
I mean, do we have it?
I can produce some emails from the ABC Special Agent John Hine that confirms that the
I don't want to, I mean, I don't know about the rest of them, but I'm not interested in that. If you want to put that on, you better get him up here. That's my view. But let's continue. So you lost me there. Somehow we got onto the ABC license away from the Porsches. How did the Porsche Club come to have this?
Because we run classes, and I can't remember the classes, the blending lab that they were doing.
A blending of like gasoline fuel for Porsches or something else?
This would be a winery.
it's a winery.
No, it's not. It's a B&B.
It was blending wine, it is winery.
What's a winery? It's a B&B.
B&B LLC.
You don't have a permit for it. Have you got a zoning permit for that place to have a winery
I
there?
have a permit.
Yeah,
Let's let
hold off until we.
Mr. Prater speak.
And so I think the events and the license are related in the fact that the Virginia State Code allows farm wineries to do usual and customary activities associated with farm wineries without local regulation unless
I'm sorry,
there's a
sir,
substantial
Counsel, but
impact.
that's not what it says, Counsel.
I can,
I've got it. I've read it.
and as evidence in those emails, the bed and breakfast has been included under the farm winery license held by Little Washington Winery. And due to that, the events such as wine tastings occurring at the tasting room that is located within the B&B are allowed because the state code prevents localities from regulating farm wineries in that manner.
So basically what you're saying is that it was formerly a B&B to which a permit, special use permit was given, but now you've changed the usage to a winery.
That is not correct. It is still a B&B, but the winery ABC license also applies upon that property. And with that license, they are permitted to hold events such as tastings. They are permitted to grow grapes, produce wine.
Correct.
No, I don't think
But
it's correct.
it was, we issued a permit for a B&B. That building now is apparently a winery.
It's still
And
operating.
so how does the B and B permit, I mean, does the state law trump
Well, wait.
our local code then?
In this instance, I'm saying that it does.
Let's just let him talk and then we'll discuss it later.
Right.
At the hearing part.
So,
So that's your argument, that's why those kind of events are.
One of the
They-
arguments, yes.
Well, what other arguments have you got besides, I just want to make sure that I get the right code section for you.
this is the one that I pulled off. Is that the,
Yeah. 15.2, 2288.3, is that what you're talking about? Local
Yes.
regulation of certain activities?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Great.
Anything, is there any other basis for what they're doing that you're?
Yes, we also,
What is that?
in the memorandum, it is agritourism and how the state handles agritourism. And the statute is 15.2-2288.6. And I have copies if you need.
I like that one. I did the point 3, but not the point 6.
Thank you. Sir?
And as you can see in this, no locality shall regulate the carrying out of any of the following activities at an agricultural operation, unless there is a substantial impact on health, safety, or the general welfare of the public. And to our knowledge, at this point, there has been no allegations of substantial impact on the health, safety, general welfare of the public. And one of the activities the
We'll
locality
hear about that at the public hearing.
All right,
shall not regulate.
do not interrupt.
One of the activities that a locality shall not regulate is agritourism activities, which is defined as, and I included the statute in there, in the packet I just handed you, that's in 3.2-6400. That's any activity carried out on a farm or ranch that allows members of the general public for recreation, entertainment, or educational purposes to view or enjoy rural activities, including farming, wineries, ranching, historical, cultural, harvest your own activities, or natural activities and attractions. And then if you go back to 2288.6, it says no locality shall regulate agritourism activities at an agricultural operation. Agricultural operation is defined also in one of the statutes I provided you in 3.2-300. Any operation devoted to the bona fide production of crops, animals, or fowl, including the production of fruits and vegetables of all kinds. And on the property 65 Clark Lane, where the bed and breakfast is located, there are grapevines, which are a crop, a fruit crop, grapevines,
No, where did you say?
at 65 Clark Lane, where the bed and breakfast is located. There are grapevines that produce grapes, a fruit, a crop, used in the production of wine.
Sounds to me like you're testifying, counsel, why don't you have your client?
That is an agricultural operation.
That-
And-
What's the annual
Don't ask him
output?
because he can't testify, he doesn't know. You're not testifying from your own knowledge, are you? Because if you are, we'll swear you.
You stating code sections that I don't have any content.
And I was at the winery earlier.
Were you
Or I was at
testifying,
the-
counsel? Are you
No, I'm
a
not.
witness? Okay, well then let your witness testify too. If that's what he wants to testify to. Because he's under oath and you're not.
Part of the reason for buying the property is that there's a 3-car garage in there. Aside from it being immediately adjacent to Little Washington Winery and the property that we have across the creek from it, was that it's got 14-foot ceilings and a 3-car garage. That's a perfect winery structure. Because I can put steel in there, I can put my fermentation tanks in there, and as a matter of fact, the winery equipment is beginning to arrive now.
Our at 65 Clark Lane,
Yes, there are.
and
How many?
1,200.
1,200? And where are they?
They're to the left or to the right of the house as you walk out the front door. Like to come up and see them. We'll be spraying tomorrow. Come on up. You can help out.
Sorry, I'm going fishing right after this meeting. But I will come up before we decide this out.
A question that just, he said gone fishing and then it just went out of my mind. So you have grapes at Little Washington Winery, and then one varietal there and another varietal
At Clark Lane,
at
yes.
Clark Lane, and you can mix and match and do all of
Yes.
that? Okay. And, oh, I know what it was. The ABC regulations, when they run through to say that you can sell alcoholic products or do winery, does that, there's no stipulation that it comes through the local boards at all? That's because that is state that tops anything that we do?
No, it doesn't.
I mean,
I don't think so. But we'll discuss that. I don't.
You're interrupting, and you
Well,
probably
I'm
shouldn't
just
do
trying
that.
to help you out because you're misstating what it says.
I'm asking the
Okay.
gentleman, because he said he's got some of the codes he's
Well,
talking
He's given it to you, so. it's in
Yes.
black and
That's
white.
all right, David.
it does not trump, and there are provisions that they need the proper local approval to have the license. And currently, they have a valid, duly licensed winery that applies to both the B&B 65 Clark Lane and the Little Washington Winery.
So is it fair to say that the winery and wine business is really constituted by the ABC permit, and it isn't differentiated between the two properties?
The license does not differentiate between the two properties. The same license is displayed in the bed and breakfast as well as the winery. Carl?
That's correct.
That
The
is-
license is displayed as it's required by law in both properties, in both the tasting room and up in the B&B.
Council, have you got anything in regards to, I mean, I didn't see it in your memorandum, any citations or any basis for what they're doing based on our zoning ordinance?
We have the special use permits and outside of that.
Outside of that. I mean, these winery activities, I mean, your basic claim, if I understand it, is that it's exempt because of these state statutes that you have presented.
Because they are a licensed winery.
Okay, I
Yes.
appreciate that, but your position is because of that, they're totally exempt from any local regulation.
Because of 2286.3,
Right.
yes.
So you're exempt from the Rappahannock County zoning ordinance? To
In
the extent
regards
you're within,
to-
to the extent the activities are, as you claim, within the definitions in Virginia Code 3.2-6400.
That is incorrect. When it's a farm winery, it is 2288.3.
But that cross-references the definitions of.
No, 2288.6, that's agritourism and
Okay.
agricultural operation.
And so which is it?
I'm saying that it is both. It
Okay.
is protected under both 2288.3, which is the licensed farm
Okay, so,
wineries.
all right, I
and
understand. So other than those two code sections and the corresponding definition section, you don't have any basis for your client's claim other than what's in the state code that is based on some provision of the Rappahannock County zoning ordinance, is that right?
The statement that there is being referenced in this code says, the usual and this is from the Code of Virginia, usual and customary activities and events at farm wineries shall be permitted without local regulation unless there is a substantial impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public. No local ordinance regulating noise other than amplified music, outdoor amplified music, shall be more restrictive than that in general stuff and so on. So that's to keep those in the audience.
Would you consider general welfare as the use of an access road or a lane?
I don't think it matters whether he considers it or whether we consider it.
Well, but I'm asking him.
I would not say that it rises to the level of general welfare.
How would you define general welfare then?
I think that is very difficult, and I'm not prepared right now to do that.
Do you have any case law on any of these sections where it's been applied?
I do not right now.
Okay.
And
At the public hearing.
these came in to regulation in 2000.
The farm winery was in 2006 or 7, and I believe the agritourism was in 2014.
14, 'cause I thought I saw, I was thinking 14, 15, okay. So that supplements what it is with the farm winery, so that's been on the books 12 years now. So 8 to 12 years we've had this law.
Madam Chairman, I move that we have, unless there's anything else, let's have a public hearing. Or let's let people, other people.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Then,
I mean, do you all have anything else to add?
Just in summary that,
Well, why don't you hold that and maybe you want to have some rebuttal or something like that?
okay.
Is that okay? Yeah.
so,
Why don't
you all can go back to your seats.
you
Thank you
retire,
very much.
retire that way.
And thank you for these
Other
documents.
side of the law.
And so we will
No,
open the public hearing.
don't want you to be in the line of fire.
If anyone wishes to make a comment, please stand up, say your name, where you live, and what your comment is, and say your name slowly enough because we have a reporter who is recording, needs to record this. Anyone like to speak to this application, to this revocation? Okay.
Would you like me to come up there?
No, speak loud enough that we get it on our microphones
very good.
and say your name.
My name is Jock Nash, and I live at 149 Clark Lane. The story of Clark Lane has been a checkered one, extending over 17 years. It is a story about 3 separate owners attempting to commercially exploit the natural beauty and quiet rural Rappahannock homes against unanimous opposition of the other 6 residents and landowners on Clark Lane. Clark Lane is 1.5 miles of tar and chip private road with a 30-foot right of way. Having a commercial operation on a private road has been a recurring nightmare for all of us. Our county government institutions, meaning the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, the building officials, Board of Zoning Appeals, and the county administrator and the zoning administrator have been unable to protect the residents for 17 years using Rappahannock County and Virginia law. It should have been sufficient, but it was not always followed. You have to remember that in 2002, the 8-bedroom, 14-bathroom structure with a wedding chapel was built on Clark Lane using a single-family residential building permit. It didn't have which was required by law, it did not have a zoning permit explicitly stating the use to which the property was going to be used. That was ignored or waived, I'm not sure. It should never have been approved, the original building. Gary Harvey, the builder and owner, immediately turned it into an illegal B&B, multiple complaints, I think there were 17, and years later, the county finally charged him with a misdemeanor zoning violation. Harvey got a $1,000 fine and a year's probation. He ultimately went broke and had to do a short sale of that property shortly thereafter. It was a distress sale, and they sold it to Randall and Kimberly Ford. The new owners, Randall and Kimberly Ford, applied for a B&B SUP. The application was recommended for denial by John McCarthy and the Planning Commission on a 5-to-1 vote, but approved by the BCA by a 1-vote margin. The Forks got their 2-bedroom SUP, but it had conditions. Only 2 bedrooms could be rented, no for-profit events or rentals, or other spaces or structures on the property to be rented or leased. The Forks violated those restrictions on a weekly basis for almost 2 years. Just before the BCA was to do their 2-year review of the controversial SUP, the Forks applied for yet another SUP, asking for 5 bedrooms. Again, the application was recommended for denial by John McCarthy and the Planning Commission for road safety and highway entrance issues. At the end of the day, the BZA approved a 3-bedroom B&B with the possibility of getting 2 more rooms with VDOT approval of the entrance from the highway and turnouts approximately every 300 feet with a site plan. This was the second and third time both the county administrator and the Planning Commission were overruled by the BCA. That was in 28 years. They again waived the county norm of not putting a commercial enterprise on a private road with only a 30-foot right-of-way. Harmony Manor was a great hit. It had great reviews and ratings. Kimberly Ford was indeed a great hostess, and it showed. She and her husband did not live there, but they hired an innkeeper. The 3-bedroom limit was violated constantly, as did the complaints from all of the neighbors. The Forks ultimately divorced, and since the B&B was Kimberly's dream, but not Randall's, the B&B was put up for sale. It was an owner-financed sale for about $1.3 million, as much as I can think. It's difficult to know who's in charge there because there are a number of trusts involved. The trustees are Randall Ford and 2 of his attorneys, as well as Carl and Don, for a total of 5 trustees. The buyers who owned the winery at Little Washington on Christmas Tree Lane continued the B&B. They immediately started renting out as many rooms as they could, easily exceeding the 3-bedroom limit. They also had parties, events, Porsche sports car gatherings, a woman's lunch bunch, wine tasting, wine mixing classes, etc., all in violation of the 2 SUPs. Now they say they did not know about the 3-bedroom limit, even though they share the same law firm as Randall Ford, and Ford is still controlling trustee of the Harmony Manor LLC. After the notice of violation, they say they no longer rent more rooms than they should. It was still over a year of knowing and purposeful non-compliance. They also say they are a farm winery that can do all the things restricted by their existing SUP, like leasing out space and land for parties, receptions, weddings, special events, etc. I've only lived on Little Jenkins Mountain for 5 years. Yoko and I often walk our dog down Christmas Tree Lane, where the winery is located. Longtime residents and neighbors always thought of the winery at Little Washington as a bar, not a winery. In 5 years, we have never seen a grape grown there. Only fallow fields and unkept fields. They, of course, can lease land elsewhere for their vineyards. The Henriksons and their partner, Randall Ford, did not fall off the turnip cart on the way into town. Indeed, Randall Ford is a corporate executive, and Carl Hendrickson was a member of the Board of Supervisors of another Virginia county for many years. They have always known what they were doing was outside their special use permit, or they should have known, but they did it anyway. The BZA must revoke the existing SUPs for Harmony Manor LLC. The property has always been owned by folks who disregarded SUP restrictions. They are not, nor were the previous owners good neighbors. An example of which was not too long ago, we had someone come knocking at our door at 11:45 or 11:30 at night. I have it on video. He came up, all the lights of our house were out. We're almost a half a mile above Harmony Manor. And he comes out with no lights anywhere on our property with his little cell phone light, looking in our windows, coming on our deck, looking in, and finally knocked on the door. And we found out he was a drunk B&B guest who had lost his way. We called our neighbors to Carl Hendricks and said what had happened. They never returned the call. And I don't know if you've had people come up your road at almost midnight, but that's dangerous. The BZA must revoke the existing SUPs for Harmony Manor LLC. I already mentioned about they're not good neighbors. They have never paid for road maintenance. None of the B&B owners or illegal owners have paid for any road maintenance in 17 years, though they are responsible for the bulk of the traffic. They are driven by money and profit, and the rest of us are sick and tired of it. We want our private road back. Carl and Donna, you should put in a road from Harmony Manor to Little Washington Winery. Close off the entrance you currently have to Clark Lane. Then you will realize your synergistic dream of a winery and a beautiful B&B. I ask that the BZA to put an end to this disaster that began here. Revoke the SUPs and let them appeal and have the courts decide whether it's the ABC, agritourism regs, farm winery rules, and whether they trump local zoning. And when it's seriously affecting the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. I think it would be much cheaper to build a road from Harmony Manor to the winery and to close the Clark Lane entrance than to pay lawyers to try to keep it open. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Peggy Spillingcoth, and I live on Christmas Tree Lane.
Can you spell that?
S as in Sam, S-P-I-L-L-E-N-K-O-T-H-E-N. Spillingcoth. Please don't let them bring all their Harmony Manor people up Christmas Tree Lane. We have enough problems with the winery people on Christmas Tree Lane. It's a small, private country lane. There's too much traffic on it. Last weekend, they had some event called Wine Sock or something. I counted 40 cars in mid-afternoon. I don't know if I got all of them. They come up this little lane, there's dust, they come down after a couple of glasses of whatever, driving too fast. It's scary, it's dangerous. And anyone who thinks it's not a danger to the public welfare, you live on one of those streets where they're doing that. It's scary. So, also, I've never seen a grape on Carl's. I mean, I just think this is a joke that they're a winery. Maybe you're getting, obviously you're getting grapes from somewhere, but you're not growing them.
Excuse me, ma'am, where did you say exactly you live?
I live on 77 Christmas Tree Lane.
So you live above the winery?
No, downhill from the winery.
So when they go to the entrance, they have to go past your house?
No, they go partway up and then they turn. But when I go out, I'm
Right, so that's what I say, you're above the entrance to the winery
correct.
on Christmas Street.
Beyond the entrance.
Right. Okay. These little private lanes, you should not put more traffic on. It's not safe.
That's what the zoning ordinance says.
Anybody else would like to speak? Yoko.
My name is Yoko Barsky.
Spell that.
B-A-R-S-K-Y. Why don't you know what's the first name? My husband Jock had spoken many things, and so I will read some of them from what I wanted to say. But we are neighbors of Harmony Manor LLC on Clark Lane. And as Jock said, this has been a very controversial, from the very beginning. And all the owners have violated zoning ordinances, building codes, special use permits, whatever they have. And the county was not enforcing the zoning ordinance. And the Clark Lane residents are suffering from that consequence. It's been 17 years. We have been here only 5, but the rest of the people have been here. I'm suffering from this for a much longer time. There have been many litigations because of that. Clark Lane is a private 30-foot right-of-way. And only about 10 feet is tarred to pavement. Harmony Manor is the only commercial operation on such a road in the entire Rappahannock County, we were told. The 50-foot of right-of-way requirement by the zoning ordinance 170-66K, item 6, was waived by the BZA on October 24th, 2013. I could not find the reason why it was waived from Mr. McCarthy's memo for record, nor the BZA meeting minutes. I believe some of you were at the meeting. The Chairman and Mr. Berg, I believe. You were at that meeting on October 24th, 2013. Do any of you recall what the reason was for the waiver of the 50-foot right-of-way? I cannot find it in any of the records.
From my recollection, I believe that it was because if they created the laybys, that would reduce any, that the sight distance would be better, and then if they didn't need a car, they could pull over. So that's my recollection. I have always had a great concern about the road situation.
I have a slightly different recollection, and that had to do, normally a vehicle is 8 feet wide. To have 2 pass probably takes, say, 20 feet, so that there is some space in between each vehicle, some on each side of the road.
But the 30-foot is not paved, it's just a right-of-way.
That's right. And
About 10 feet.
Well, let me finish. There was an option of removing the pavement and making it a wider road. And the general consensus of the people on Clark Lane was they didn't want to remove the pavement. But they didn't want to add width. And this is my recollection, it's 5 or 6 years ago, and that's why nothing really changed at that meeting. I'm happy to hear other people, but that was my recollection of it. In order to make it a wider road, the pavement was going to have to be removed.
Picked up and laid back down.
Or just a gravel road be there instead. So that's why I remember that there wasn't a change in the road at that meeting.
That's ringing.
Thank you. But the traffic on Clark Lane has been increasing, especially after the winery had started. Notably, and my neighbors have noticed that owners themselves go up and down several times a day. They are service and delivery vehicles, customers for wine tasting and wine-related classes. Many of these drivers probably had some alcohol influence and unfamiliar with this narrow road. I could not put this on the board docs, but I think you have it there. The first picture shows how narrow the pavement is. You can put it in there. It's not on there, but if you see the first picture, you can see how narrow the pavement is.
Could we let the record reflect, let's mark this Exhibit 4,
Yes.
this whole series of pictures that Ms. Barsky put in.
It's probably quite about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
8 pages, it's an 8-page exhibit. Have you got it, Council?
Yes, I do.
You do? So we're going to mark that Exhibit 4 for the record. Okay, thank you.
One of the conditions that SUP 11-12-2 specified was review in 2 years and consider the traffic experience and its impact on the road. Unfortunately, this was not done. SUP 13-09-01 required to have the turnouts designed and installed. This is not done within a specified time. So I'd like to present the current condition of Clark Lane for your review. That's what the pictures are. When you the second picture you see this. That's how we encountered oncoming traffic. I'm taking a picture from my car, that's the dashboard. And one car has to go all the way into these hedges. And I'm all the way onto the grass field. Because the pavement here is only about 10 feet wide. That's the second. And that was in one of the wine tasting days. To show you the increased traffic, second page shows, this is at the ladies' lunch bunch day, I believe. Cars were parked on the field. There is way more than any B&B traffic. And
What is ladies' lunch bunch?
pardon?
What is ladies' lunch bunch?
A lot of
In case some judge is reading this record someday. What is it?
Social,
I think that's like, lunch bunch is really for men and women work together and we decide to have lunch, right?
It's the first Friday of every month at different hotels.
They go to different places.
Do they bring your lunch or does it serve to?
No, it's usually potluck.
Usually what?
You bring your own lunch.
Potluck.
You have something to share.
So it's only for women?
Pardon?
Is that legal?
Okay, just the fourth photo is just a couple of portions that I happen to be there. I have a chance to take a photo.
Where is this taken from?
Right on Park Lane from Mrs. Jenkins' front yard. I was visiting her.
So this is down more
Down
near the
closer to-
co-op, like across from the co-op?
Yes, it is,
Almost,
because that's where the 15-mile-an-hour sign is.
Yes. Going to the next page, that shows the wine tasting along with the
Now we're on page, what, 3, I
vineyard.
just want to get a page 3 of Exhibit 4.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't put the page number on. This is a Skyline Vineyard, the beetle sign says. Not, there's no inn on it, but sign of the bed is on it. So is that, are they advertising for vineyard or inn is kind of ambiguous. Yeah, with a wine tasting temporary sign. That goes up, wine tasting. Okay, so we go on, the VDOT letter dated July 1st, 2014, that was on the board docs and in your packet. It's also ambiguous about their decisions because no survey of the Clark Lane entrance from the highway, Route 211, 522, was provided by Harmony Manor. The letter recommends an approval for a bed and breakfast use, not for winery. But that was also 2014, 5 years ago. Things have changed, including the farmer's co-op driveway that's facing the Clark Lane. People used to come in and out of that corner, but now they made it exit only. Because there have been many accidents and all the mailboxes have been knocked down quite often. That's why co-op changed it to only the exit. I don't have a photo of the exit sign.
So that's what's shown on page 5 of your exhibit? The one that says entrance to Clark Lane from 522 and damaged pavers?
It doesn't show the sign, that one.
Okay.
That just shows the damage on the road. There was actually another VDOT letter dated October 15, 2013, which is on the page. Which page is that? Sorry, one of the last pages. Yeah. Last one. Oh, you have that? No, that's July 1st, 2014. No, this is a VDOT letter dated October 15th, 2013.
That's on page,
That's on the page.
next to last page.
Yes,
is your-
next to the last page.
Page 7 of exhibit 4.
Yes. Regarding the Harmony Manor's SUP 1112-02. Here, VDOT engineer states the requirement for the VDOT moderate volume entrance would have to be designed, permitted, and constructed with paved 25-foot minimum side radii and an 18-foot minimum width of the road. There's somewhere between 18 and 30 feet. So, Monday, I went out and measured the bottom of Clark Lane, which is
Page 6.
page 6. And if we take a 25 feet from the road, and I'm not even counting the little pavement outside the white line, if we go 25 feet, the width of the road is only 14 feet. And very quickly it narrows down to 11 feet in front of Ms. Jenkins' driveway. So it clearly does not qualify for any of the VDOT entrance. And if you like to, if you claim to be the agri-tourism, their requirement for the entrance is much more severe than this. Requires a 30 to 50 feet. Well, there's no way you can make this Clark Lane that kind of road with this rocky embankment on one side and co-op entrance or exit on the other side. So why this part was overlooked, I don't know. No, that's a July 15th letter. This VDOT letter of, that one, sorry, yeah, October 15th, 2013. But somehow it got lost.
What got lost?
Pardon?
What got lost?
The requirements.
The requirements on there's a VDOT letter of October 15th, 2013.
It looks like you
That's
found
on
it.
page 7, yes.
The follow-up.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean it got lost when they were supposed to be
Yeah,
doing it?
somewhere, yeah, it got lost, I don't know where. And close to this entrance is the true Rappahannock native, Mrs. Janice Jenkins. She was born in Clark, on a farm on Clark Lane, grew up on Clark Lane, Mary Jenkins, and moved across the street, still on Parkway, the bottom of Jenkins Mountain. The survivor of 2 cancers and 2 hip replacements, Janice could not attend today's hearing due to another illness. She told me how bothersome it was when the B&B guests arriving at 1 or 2 o'clock at night, their car's headlight shining directly into her bedroom and disturbing her sleep. We live about third of a mile above the Harmony Manor entrance. But there have been a number of cars driving up, ignoring our large no trespass sign. They come up and either to use a driveway to turn around, or as Doc says, one man came in the middle of the night with a flashlight and looking into our windows. A man walked up and started to take photographs around there. Okay, so we have a nice view, but I mean, coming up, walking up, and taking photographs is also disturbing. Yes, Clark Lane residents are terribly bothered by the numerous strangers on the private road. On weekends, an entire B&B building is lit up like a cruise ship. All the balconies, the porches and everything. Completely ignoring the dark sky initiative that country is inspired to achieve. So these special use permits were issued on the bed and breakfast business. Farm winery activities and events with associated traffic increases were not contemplated by the BZA, DDOT, or anybody else. So I emphasize the negative impact on the risk of safety and welfare the Harmony Manor LLC poses to the residents of Clark Lane and our families and friends. Revoking this SUP is the first step for the county and BZA to start following its own laws and regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please state your name and if it's an unusual name, spell it, please.
Brian Schultz, SCHULTZ. I live on Clark Lane. I live the closest house to was the Skyline Video Camp. I haven't heard it said today that I've been to many of these BZA meetings on the same subject, and I've heard members of the BZA say that a B&B has less of an impact than a four-family home. And I just want to give my experience with that. I don't know where that statistic comes from, but I'm assuming it's from some B&B advocacy group. In my life, I've lived in an apartment, duplex, townhouses, single-family homes, grew up in the middle of a cul-de-sac with 5-bedroom homes, and I live on Clark Lane. My life experience shows me that B&Bs have much more traffic than a four-person family. You have guests driving to many local events using the B&B as a home base. We've got linen delivery trucks. We've got, actually, personally, I think the Hendersons go up and down the street 4 times a day in a four-person family would. A different group, I was part of a different group opposing Harmony Manor. Approximately March 14, they told our group that if we did not cease, they would sue my wife and I personally over our trees, which we put up to give us some privacy. So at that point, I had to hire...
Just a second. Who said that they would...
This would have been Harmony Manor at that point, but they seem to still be intertwined. That's why I'm bringing that up.
Mr. Fort.
Yes. Or his legal team, I believe, is here today. So at that point, I had to hire an attorney personally to
send their law firm a letter telling them that, if we have any offending trees, we would remove them. 5/14, they filed a lawsuit. Lawsuit didn't drop until well into 2017, they did drop it. I was encumbered for over 3 years, over $5,000 worth of legal bills on that for no reason whatsoever, other than to pick on the weakest link, because we make a moderate code.
Excuse me, what?
I think we make a more moderate living than
Oh,
the
really?
than the other people.
I didn't hear that, sorry.
But you paid $5,000?
No, I paid over $5,000 in legal
In
bills
legal.
over that 3-year period. It never went anywhere. These were just lawyers sending letters back and forth to each other about the subject. In that time, I was encumbered, so we could not get a home equity line. I had black standing water in my yard, but that was my dirty secret I never told anybody about, because I had to wait for for this to go away so I could get a loan to get our septic replaced, which we did. It was over 50 years old. So these are the impacts that a B&B has on you that I've never had a family impact my life like that. I've never been to a homeowners association meeting. I've never been to court over a neighbor, but we've been fighting this B&B for close to 20 years now. Every person that has run something there has run that B&B, has done things that were not allowed. Some got caught, some didn't, but they all advertised to do things they were definitely not committed to. I think this is a chance to end this nightmare in Clark Lane tonight. And I thank you for considering.
My name is Cynthia Stamps, S-T-A-M-P-S.
S-T-A-M-P-S.
I don't live on Clark Lane. I live in Woodville, but these are my friends. And I have many opportunities to go up and down Clark Lane and spend time with them. And I'm just briefly here I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't expect to say anything. But listening to everything has prompted me to want to make sure that you all understand the emotional impact that this has had, that I'm privy to know because I'm so close to them. And it is significant. And so I want to go down on record as saying, for 13 years that I've known Loretta and Brian, and for probably maybe 6 or, yes, Yoko, it's really been, it's been a heartache to listen to them and to also be a part of it on the outside, because when I frequent Clark Lane, I see the dangers, I see the road and how it's potholes everywhere, how there's no way to really get out of the way, to witness for myself some speeding drivers, and the access from 211 there. I mean, it's precipitous, and for people that are going the speed limit to make that turn, oftentimes it's done at the last minute. It just seems to me to be a wrong thing for us and for them. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is V.L. Elliott. My wife and I own the property at 184 Clark Lane, referencing the point on public safety. 4 times members of my family have been run off the road run over onto the shoulder of the road by traffic coming out of the winery. Twice my daughter with her 5-year-old, and twice me. That does not seem to be too much given the length of time many people have lived there, but we did not settle until the 28th of September last year. During that time, my family and I have made significant comments and concerns known about the deterioration of the road below us. And it really has gone, and it's gone very fast in that short period of time. I will limit my comments to that unless anyone has questions.
But when you said the winery, you mean the B&B? You're on Clark Lane, you're not
I'm talking about the big house
But on
to the left as you go by the trees on your right.
You're talking about Clark Lane, though, not the
Yes.
little washroom.
Yes, I have great sympathy for my neighbor on Christmas Tree Lane. We face the same thing and on a smaller, less well-maintained lane.
It is smaller.
And your location, just to clarify, is,
170.
I mean, is that at the top, is that below Jock and Yoko or above them?
We're above.
Oh, so you're the left.
You said
We're the end of the road.
179?
Thank you, sir.
182.
Are there any other comments to be made? Okay, then,
May I add one thing?
okay.
The former owners of 184 Clark Lane, Alan Lexinger and John Davis, they had paid to repair the section of the street between the Harriman entrance all the way to the highway, May of 2016. 2017, I'm sorry. It's 2 years, almost 2 years now. It did not last. That section did not last 2 years. A bunch of potholes that you see on the picture of it. That's after the repair. Oh, the last picture.
Exhibit 4?
Looked like that's a 2018, about a year after it was paid, unpaid for by the people.
Show us which picture you're talking about.
Any date?
Is that what?
Yeah, that's 2018, that's a year after it was patched and the repair.
The one with the duck?
No, I was taking a picture of the turkey.
Oh, it's a turkey?
So I was planning to take a picture of the road, because that's the only one I had.
Thank you.
So I just wanted that back.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing now. And so the board can will discuss. But I first wanted to ask, do you have anything else to say, Michelle?
Okay.
And then the Hickersons or the council?
Yes,
Do I need to swear him in?
Nope. Just our-
Yeah, these are,
Promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes, I did.
Okay, now and that goes retroactive to what you said earlier? I know that you're licensed and all of that, but we do sometimes.
Ask me what. So there are a few things I wanted to address about that, comments I heard. One was that Carl really testified to grapes growing there, being on the property, both 65 Clark Lane and Little Washington Winery, and that was under oath. To the road, the condition of the road only matters in respect to the additional 4th and 5th bedroom. The road, there is no permit conditions regarding the condition of the road. I am not aware of the private access agreement since it is a private lane, but those do not go to the matter that we're speaking about tonight, which is the special use permit and whether there's been compliance with the terms of the special use permit and whether or not they should be revoked. And we did not allege that the while there were met after the time period in which the entrance approval from FIA as well as the turnouts and that site plan that was shown, while those were completed at one point, they were not in the necessary time frame to get the additional bedrooms. And we've agreed upon that tonight. But
So you're referring to the, like what's in Debbie Kaiser's letter of July 2016?
yes, and I'm saying that the entrance, the condition of the entrance is not related to the special use permit as we're speaking about it tonight, because we are not claiming that they are permitted to have 5 bedrooms, the 4th and 5th additional bedroom to be rented. We're saying that upon learning that they were only permitted to do 3 bedrooms, they have since stopped, removed those, and we showed you the records, and that's in the record in, as an exhibit to the memorandum we submitted, that they have not rented more than 3 bedrooms.
Just a second, let's check the report. Do we have that multi-page document they filed admitted as an exhibit?
You talked about it, you said you were going to admit it as exhibit 2, I believe, but let me go back.
You wrote one as 2.
I'm talking about the June 21 letter and memorandum. I thought I started after that saying
I do
things.
not recall that.
What's exhibit 1? You have exhibit 1? Because that should be it, I think. No? All right, well, what do we have to? What number?
Including this was, yeah,
4.
this
That was
is
4. All right, well, let's just make sure your thing is in as exhibit 5. Is Mr. Crowder's letter and the attached memorandum.
But that was distributed earlier.
It was distributed earlier, but I want to make sure it's in the hearing record.
Okay.
Okay? And that's, we need to give one to the, we need a clean copy, okay?
What about this one from ABC?
Could I please ask that that be in the
All right,
exhibit
well,
6?
we'll put that next, okay? So this is going to be 5, is the letter and the memo, which is 6 pages, and then there's exhibits. There's exhibits A through G, correct? So we're going to put that in as exhibit, mark that. That'll be what, 5? And then this thing from the ABC, the correspondence.
I haven't physically marked anything.
Here's a pen.
Six.
You want to mark that
Pen.
6?
This one's going to be 5 and 6.
Right, 5, and this ABC thing. And exhibits,
All one exhibit.
yeah,
here.
all that, ABC attached, ABC up to G goes. The last one, right? There at the bottom.
Yes.
On this 8-page exhibit from the ABC is exhibit 6.
Continue.
And so, to go back to the road, just that is not, for the road only gets into, and the entrance only become a factor when seeking the 4th and 5th
Okay.
bedrooms to be rented.
However, we're now looking at volume, okay.
And then, speaking to volume and impacts, these were things that were considered by the Board of Zoning Appeals, presumably when they approved and issued these 2 permits. And it's not something that can be retroactively accounted for and attached to these permits.
To the original permits.
Correct. The original 2012, I think it's 11-12-02, and then 13-0901.
Okay.
Another wine stock has come up a few times tonight. I just want to clarify that that is an event that occurs at the Little Washington Winery. It is not at issue or subject to this special use permit. The headlights and night headlights coming in at night, as well as the lighting, those are not set forth in the conditions of the special use permit, and hours of regulation, lighting, or driving at night with the headlights are not in there, and there's been no allegation that they are violating local ordinance regarding the lighting. And then just addressing the general welfare and public safety. Up until tonight, there has been nothing that our client has received that has been an allegation that they are negatively impacting the general welfare or having a substantial impact on health of the public. And because of that, we have not received anything, and we are not prepared to defend that, and have not been given proper notice and due process to defend those claims. And I don't think that the county or Board of Zoning Appeals at this point has alleged any of that.
Okay. Good.
And then there are just a couple other exhibits that I wanted to introduce, if that's okay.
Okay.
One is the advertisements that were contained in the notice of violation letter that referenced the website. There were clippings from the website regarding, I think it appeared that they were claiming that the elopement meant that there was weddings occurring with there's a advertisement, I will hang them out, so I'm not.
I don't understand what you're saying.
These were in the notice of violation.
Oh, and the zoning administrators?
Yes, yes,
Ah,
yes.
okay. But they're not, they weren't attached to it?
No, that time it was not that.
What?
Do you,
You need this.
Yeah, I guess that's gonna be exhibit 7.
and I just wanted to, outside of these, there was nothing as far as events that were claimed up until this point, outside of advertisements for elopement honeymoon package, which I guess was interpreted as being a wedding opportunity, whereas an elopement is when a couple goes off to secretly get married. Yes, to elope and not have a big wedding or an event. They do it privately. The other was the whole house, which we discussed earlier. And I just wanted to get this, and then, yes.
So that's all in this one exhibit?
Yes,
Okay.
there are 4 pages.
Okay, so that'll be exhibit, what, 7?
7.
7. Good.
And then the other is a farm lease agreement between Harmony Manor Bed and Breakfast and the Little Washington Winery, which was one of the things that was, as the ABC agent requested and required, to allow the winery to use the bed and breakfast as part of its wine tastings and apply the ABC license of the bed and breakfast to, or of the winery to the bed and breakfast. And I just wanted to introduce that for the record's sake and have that.
Okay, that'll be number 8. You got one for your recorder?
I think, here, Matt, you can still be there.
Okay. She's not gonna help you.
And then I would just like to reiterate that we do not believe that the bed and breakfast is in violation of the conditions of the special use permit based on some of the things we discussed tonight, which include that they no longer and have not since receiving the notice of violation rented more than 3 bedrooms in any given night, and then also the fact that the activities of farm wineries are precluded from local regulation, as well as the agritourism activities are precluded from local regulation, and therefore the events and the no for-profit events or rental of any of the structure condition does not apply. And respectfully, I say we find that they are not in violation and do not determine that the 2 special use permits should not be revoked tonight.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so does everybody want to just stand up for a second?
Let's take a 5-minute recess.
There you go. We have stand-up break. Smoke, we should be doing that. Okay, so it's now time for the BZA members to deliberate. And I would just like to remove so many pieces. So the question that we are looking at that came from the zoning administrator is whether or not there's been non-compliance with the terms or conditions of the permits that were from 2012 and 13, maximum 3 bedrooms, and then no for-profit events or rentals or other space on the structure or property. So those are the issues that we are to discuss. So there's been a lot of information that's come up about road situation, impact. That's not where our focus is. It's very narrow focus. So, Mr. Bird, do you have anything you'd like to report?
Yes. I feel that we are here, as our Madam Chairman said, to deal with the alleged violations of the initial special use permit as recorded by the BZA, I think it was to the forts. And what I see is that the only violation that has happened is that more rooms were rented after the acquisition of the property, recent acquisition of the property, and the applicants alleged that they did not know that they were exceeding the allowed number of rooms, and when advised that they were exceeding the allowed number of rooms, they modified their behavior and didn't exceed the number of rooms allowed after the notice was given them. As far as the events are concerned, it seems to me that that has been superseded from the local ordinances by the Virginia State ordinance, which states that they are allowed by right for a vineyard, winery, farm, agricultural enterprise, and so that as my reading of that Virginia law, the Harmony Manor is not in violation of the event ordinances of this county. And because of these facts as I see them, I don't feel that I can find them in violation of their special use permit.
Mr. Mackler?
This has been a messed up situation from the beginning. As far as the violations go, the way I see it, when Debbie Kaiser wrote a letter in 2016, that notified the LLC that they were in violation. And again, as far as the fourth and fifth bedroom, which they were renting at the time. And
The forts.
the fourth and fifth. They got the third, and that had been approved. They had not done the work that was necessary on the roadway, and to my knowledge, that work has never been done. I've made several trips up and down there looking for the turnouts or whatever. They don't seem to exist, but that is not part of what we're deciding tonight, because the fourth and fifth bedroom are not part of that decision. But they have been violating the three bedroom since Debbie Kaiser's letter, which they have admitted to. I mean, whether, it's the old thing, ignorance of the law doesn't mean that, you can get away with it. I mean, so they've been doing it for years and did not cease until they were finally basically caught. So to say that they're in compliance now is not the point. It's the fact that they have been in non-compliance for quite some time, and the residents of Clark Lane have had to pay the price. And there does not appear to be anybody on Clark Lane that is in favor of this B&B being there and is not aware of the numerous violations that have gone on over the years. And I don't believe it is something that can just be ignored and say, well, they promised not to do it anymore. So I think they have been in violation. And also I have questions now with what they have done in regards to the winery, in that the original permit was issued for the structure. It wasn't for the third floor, or the second floor, or the first floor, or the basement. It was issued for the structure. They have now changed the rules and have decided to lease out the basement and the first floor for other purposes. And so basically what the permit had been issued for originally does no longer exist. And so I think that cannot be overlooked also.
Just for clarification for me, they still have the bedrooms, but nothing else was said about the lower floors or wherever it is that they've got. They're using these spaces now for wine tasting. So that's what you're saying?
Correct. According to this lease that I was just reading, the winery, the Washington Winery now leases the bottom, the main floor and the basement of the structure, and now only the bedrooms that are upstairs constitute the B&B. I don't think we've ever run into anything like that, where the configuration of the building changed
With the uses.
from what the use permits had been granted for.
But we're to be looking at the bedrooms, so.
No, I don't believe so. A B&B they have a breakfast. They're apparently they must be leasing, the B&B must be leasing back the use of the kitchen to prepare the breakfast for, unless they're preparing the rooms now upstairs or something, I don't know.
Okay.
For now, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Michelle, could you put up the original 2012 permit? There you go, that one. Okay. Before I get to the permit, I want to amplify what Mr. Mackel has said about what I think I would quote as, this has been a mess from the beginning. And the mess started, as one of the witnesses, I think Mr. Nash stated, the county, for whatever reason, just totally ignored the requirements in the zoning ordinance that start, I believe, in section 170-36, that specifically says, with respect to all the uses, uses by right, uses by special permit use, and use by special exception, section 170-36 is the section with the chart of uses and what's permitted in what district. And it specifically says that no use is allowed unless and until a zoning permit is issued. And elsewhere, I don't have the section of the ordinance at my fingertips right now, but elsewhere, it specifically states no building permit shall be issued for any use of any property or building or construction of any building or structure unless and until a zoning permit is issued by the zoning administrator. And when this structure was first built, I believe in 2002 or thereabouts, no zoning permit was issued at all. And instead, just a building permit was issued under the pretext, and it was a false pretext, that this was going to be a single-family residence, despite its configuration of, I believe, 8 bedrooms and 14 baths. That was apparent on the face of whatever the plans that they submitted, that this was not ever intended to be a single-family residence. And in fact, almost immediately from the testimony we've heard tonight, that hasn't been rebutted by anyone, that's exactly what happened. They began to violate the zoning ordinance by using it for events, weddings, as a B&B, renting out rooms. There were numerous complaints. That's the testimony that we heard tonight that hasn't been rebutted. And ultimately resulted in Mr. Harvey being convicted of a misdemeanor for violating the zoning ordinance. And for using it as a B&B without a permit, and using it for events without a permit. So when this finally came up, when that seemed to come about at approximately the same time as when it was sold, the Fords then came in and applied for a special use permit. And not without some difficulty, because in another, I don't know if you want to say violation or just non-observance of our zoning ordinance and also a state law, there's no minutes of the meeting for the 2011 meeting, the 2011 permit application that was heard on January 25th, 2012. There's no minutes in the minute book that were ever approved, and instead there's a CD, which I finally obtained today after some searching for it, and finally figuring out where it went, because in the minute book there's one page that has some reference to see attached recording of the meeting, which is on 2 CDs that are in this envelope that I have withdrawn from the court file in the appeal in CL 12-27 is the case number. I did before this meeting listen to most of the tape, and I circulated some notes that I made. But one of the things that comes across is, or two of the things that come across, is that the whole business about the road was really the focus of the 2012 meeting when the original special use permit was granted. And Ms. Matthews, you were you were very concerned about it and voted no to the original permit. You're the only one other than Mr. Sharp, who's not here, who was present at that meeting. The rest of us weren't on the board. But if you listen to the tape, it's obvious that one of the stipulations that the Forts made repeatedly on January 25th, 2012, was that all they were asking for was a 3-bedroom B&B. That's all they wanted. And they were going to have a maximum of 6 persons, they said. And they specifically said they were not going to have any weddings. They were not going to have any kind of events. They were only going to have 6 people. They went to great lengths to testify, both Mr. and Mrs. Ford, that the issue about the road was exaggerated. All the concerns of the neighbors was exaggerated because they cited some information from B&B literature that 30% occupancy was pretty much all they would expect. And that meant that and Mr. Ford and Mrs. Ford both said it numerous times, there's going to be 3 rooms, there's going to be no more than 3 cars, and only 3 nights a week. That's all the traffic this was going to generate. And they were going to live there. Part-time. They were going to be there on site. They said that they still live down in...
Mr. Connick,
Yeah.
could you talk about the case in front of us?
I am talking about the
Forts in 2013?
I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you, Mr. Bird.
This is
and I think
taking up time.
Well, I'm
and
sorry. I think it's directly
It
relevant.
has nothing to do
Well, I beg your
with this
pardon.
case.
I beg your pardon. I think it has everything to do.
We are talking about violations of a special
Okay.
use permit,
Okay, wait a
not
minute.
ancient history.
I'm not talking, but the ancient history is that permit that's up on the board. And it said, and the reason it said it is because of the representations that they made. And they said maximum of 2 rooms, which was later expanded to 3 in 2013, and that's all. And the second condition was no for-profit events, I think, or rentals of other spaces or in structure or on property was the second condition. And it was to be reviewed in 2 years about whether or not that was going to put an excessive demand on the road. Now, at the time that was done, the state law that council has referred to for the Henriksons, or for the B&B, for the LLC, because the Henriksons don't own it. They own the entity. And it's the same entity that got the permit. It's the same entity that owned it then and that owns it now. That hasn't changed. They knew about the winery provisions. And they specifically said they weren't going to have, not only they specifically said they weren't going to have those type of events, they told the Board of Zoning Appeals at that January 2012 meeting that if they didn't get the permit and if somebody else bought it and made it into a winery, they could have unlimited wine tastings and all the very things that they're doing now. So that's why that was put in there, that they wouldn't lease it out to a winery or to anybody else so that it wouldn't generate that kind of traffic. And that's why condition 2 was put in the permit originally. Now, years later, how many years is it? 8 years later, no, 7, sorry. 7 years later, here we are, and the supposed justification for these events is that, oh, it's part of a winery, that the farm lease that they've put up here, the lease, as Mr. Macula said, this lease agreement, farm lease agreement,
Exhibit 8.
that's Exhibit 8, thank you, specifically violates Condition 2. It is renting out the property, not only the structure, but also the property to another legal entity that doesn't own the property, that owns the adjoining property next door, that's a different, well, the winery doesn't own anything, according to Mr. Henriksen. Mr. Henriksen and his wife own that property. Well, it doesn't matter, they're not the same legal entity. They're individuals. And the winery is a separate legal entity from Harmony Manor B&B LLC. So they have rented out the Harmony Manor B&B LLC property in direct violation of Condition 2 for wine tastings and all these other kind of events, which now they're claiming is exempt. And I take great issue with what you said, Mr. Byrd, for the reasons I already said. Not only that, but also because the highway permit and all that part of it was predicated on only a B&B, when in fact now it's not only a B&B. Now, I don't know what it is. It's a B&B, it's a winery, there's wine tastings, they're having a school there. On their website, they're advertising classes for people, and that's another special use permit that they need to get unless they come under the winery exemption. Well, I don't know exactly, and I think that if we can't resolve it, we ought to get a legal opinion about what is and what isn't included in this agritourism, and whether wine making or wine blending classes is a typical and ordinary, customary event. That's one thing, but if you read this statute, you know, with all due respect to you, Mr. Byrd, I went to law school, and I don't think you did. But when I read this, it says, no locality shall require, I'm reading from subsection B of 15.2-2288.6, agricultural operations, local regulations of certain activities. That's what counsel for the B&B has proffered. It says, subsection B, no, quote, no locality shall require special exception, administrative permit not required by state law, or special use permit for any activity listed in subsection A on property that is zoned as agriculture district or classification, unless there is a substantial impact on the health, safety, or general welfare of the public. Well, the evidence that's been adduced here tonight is that, in fact, there is a substantial impact. I don't know about on health, but certainly on the safety and the general welfare of the public. Namely, the traffic issues. We had one man testify, he's been run off the road. We've had other people testify about people jamming on their brakes because they don't know where it is and is slowing down on the highway at the last possible minute. We had Ms. Barsky testify and put in Exhibit 4 with pictures and also with the unrebutted standards for an agritourism entrance that this doesn't meet. It doesn't meet the VDOT that Mr. Orr wrote to Mr. McCarthy about in 2013. It doesn't meet the standards of the subsequent letter in July of 2014 about, it says the whole entrance would have to be redesigned. It would have to be widened to whatever's in Exhibit 4. It's on there. It doesn't meet any of the standards for either a regular commercial type entrance that Mr. I think it's Orr. Orr. That he said would be required, and it certainly doesn't meet the requirements that Ms. Barsky put in, and that's unrebutted testimony. There's the statute, and there's the VDOT standard, and the last page of Exhibit 4 of what the requirements are. It has to have, I believe it's a 30-foot entrance. Will that have it anywhere near 30 feet? Anywhere. So even if they could come under that, they don't meet the highway standards. And if they don't meet the highway standards, how can any reasonable person say that this doesn't have a substantial impact on safety? Not only of the people on Clark Lane, but their visitors, their invitees, and people that are just driving along the highway, who have people now who are drinking wine. It's bad enough they don't know where they're at and they're unfamiliar with the road. Now they've been tasting wine, and who knows how much they've been tasting. Now they're driving out of that entrance and coming onto the highway. There's no deceleration lane there that it would be required for that kind of an entrance, which every place else along the highway now has. The bank has it, everybody's got one, because those standards didn't exist at the time, but they exist now when this use has been established. There's nothing from VDOT that shows that they have complied with the things they would have to comply with to come under this exemption that they cited and that you have repeated. I think that that's just not so. And it's the part about wineries, which is 15.2-2288.3, has the same language in it. It says, with a farm winery, and I'm reading from subsection A of 15.2-2288.3, it says, usual and customary activities and events at farm wineries shall be permitted without local regulation unless there is a substantial impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, which has been demonstrated here, I think, beyond cavil and CAVIL. It doesn't say you can't regulate it, and it doesn't say that it's exempt. It says there shouldn't be any local regulation of it unless there's a substantial impact, and that's been shown that there is a substantial impact. And because of that, these kind of events, in my opinion, don't fall within either one of these state statutory exemptions, assuming they're valid. Now, I don't know what the General Assembly meant when they passed a law that says ordinary and customary activities of wineries. I don't know what they are. I don't know what's in that list. And I think that statute, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, I'm not counsel to the board, is void for vagueness. We, on the other hand, in Rappahannock County, have a right, not only a right to enact our own zoning ordinance, but a duty, we have a duty as a board to enforce the zoning ordinance. And the zoning ordinance, in the very beginning section, says that the purpose of the zoning ordinance is to protect the health and safety of people in the neighborhoods where these activities are going to be carried on. And to allow this to go on, it's even without the specific condition that was put in there to protect the neighbors, now they've changed the condition. They didn't come to the zoning administrator and say, you know, when we did this, even though the winery exemption was already in state law since 2007, some 5 years before that, or 4.5 years before the special use permit was ever granted, they didn't ask to be exempt. They didn't claim they were exempt. On the other hand, they promised. They represented right in this room, at this table, they weren't going to have those kind of events. And that was the predicate on which the board gave a limited B&B permit. And I invite you, if you want to take these tapes, or maybe Michelle can copy them. I'm going to ask that the court, now that the case is over, return these to the board so we have our own record of our own meeting. But to say that they can just do that, they didn't check, and I want to address what Mr. Mackey said and amplify that as well. They didn't just buy the property. That would have been maybe a different story, even though Mr. Makala is exactly right that ignorantum legis est non exclusio, which means ignorance of the law is no excuse. Everybody's obligated to know what the law is, and especially when you buy a property with an existing permit, there's such a thing as due diligence. And due diligence means you go to the zoning office and say, give me the permit. And I can't speak to what David Dameron, who was only here 4 or 5 months, what he did or didn't do, and what representations he made to Mr. Hendrickson. And as I said to him, I have 2 cases in other counties where the same thing happened, where my clients were told by somebody in the zoning ordinance.
Let's keep it here.
I am keeping it here. I'm just saying that's no basis for asserting some kind of a privilege. You have to have it in writing. You have to have it in writing under state law and under the county law. And they didn't get the permit. The permit files were there. They're here on the table, or Michelle's got them with her. They're right there. They've got them. There's the permit. The second permit is there. The letter from Debbie Kaiser is there in the file. It's all there. And it was there at the time David Dameron said or didn't say, whatever he did or didn't say, which we don't know because he's not here. And the writing, that's why you have it in writing. That's why you have a permit in writing. And that's why you have the conditions in writing. So there isn't this kind of an issue that, oh, well, he told us we could do it. And if we're going to run the zoning ordinance on the basis of somebody coming in and saying, oh, well, somebody told me this, that, or the other thing that I could do it without a permit, when the zoning ordinance says you can only do what you're permitted to do based on what the BZA says. And the BZA spoke, right there it is. Signed by John McCarthy, 1/26/2012. Those conditions were both violated. Now, what I propose to do is, I make a motion, and I'll make it now, that we revoke the permit. They admitted they violated it on a routine basis. They say they stopped, okay? Let them reapply, and let them reapply for however many rooms they want, and start over, and we'll see. In my opinion, I don't think this thing should have ever been permitted in the first place because it doesn't meet the zoning ordinance standards of a requirement of a 50-foot right-of-way unless there's special circumstances, and that's why you voted against it. And that's why the Planning Commission, even some of the members who are very pro-B&B and tourist homes also voted against it because it didn't meet the specs. It's a dangerous road. It's not appropriate. And it wasn't appropriate then, and so let them start over. Either that, or let's continue this on our docket until next month. And if they want to make some supplemental filing they say they're surprised by some of this, they're the ones who brought up the exemption. And now when we bring up the fact that the exemption was already there and what everybody's testifying about the road, okay, fine, let's have another hearing. You put in your evidence and let the people come back, and let's get the highway department to put its input in, because all we have is a bunch of hearsay. We have a letter from 2013 and another email from 2014 that when I read them, I don't see how you come to any conclusion other than the man did not approve what's there. He said it doesn't meet the standards. And it clearly doesn't meet the standards according to what I see here in front of me that Ms. Barsky was so kind to provide for the agribusiness or agritourism entrance. So let's continue it. If you don't want to revoke it now, which I'm in favor of, and I make it so move, if you don't want to do that, let's continue it to the next meeting so we can have more information. And one more thing and then I'm finished.
Promise?
Promise. You know, with all due respect, Madam Chairman, these people have all been suffering for 18 years. So if I go on for 18 minutes, I don't think it's going to kill anybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You know, enough is enough already. As some famous Supreme Court justice said, 3 generations of idiots is enough, of imbeciles is enough. So 3 times before this board and the Planning Commission and getting imbecilic decisions out of it is enough. It's time to enforce the zoning ordinance as it's written, and it's time to enforce the conditions that this board put on this permit, starting right now. But if we're going to continue it, I want to see all the records they say they've got, so we can have it documented in the file, so when they appeal it to circuit court, the judge can see the record of all the times with this permit, the second permit, the letter from Debbie Kaiser, all the times, all the rentals that they did in violation of the conditions when they knew or should have known, if they did any due diligence, that they were limited to 3 bedrooms. Thank you.
It's easy to see that there is a lot, we've been handed a lot of documents that we've not had a chance to study. And the board members always do their due diligence and do a lot of reading of the law and so forth. So I would entertain a motion that we continue this until we get more documents and that we can show where the due diligence was done or overlooked, and then put it on the docket for next month.
Well, I made a motion that I think is on the table, so let's see if there's a second to my motion to revoke it.
All
I
right.
guess not.
It's not a second, so that motion dies, and so the motion is on the floor that we would continue this with and get the proper documents in here.
You invited it, it's not on the floor yet.
So, is there a motion? I can make a motion, or someone else can make a motion that we continue this.
I'll second your motion.
All right. So then we will.
Well, is it going to be with the requirement that they produce those documents?
Yes.
And can it also be with the condition that we invite Randy or whoever it is from the highway department to be here next time and testify?
Well, whoever is the highway engineer, they change also, but we need to have a highway engineering information. We need to have the registration information that you spoke of. We need to have the impact use of that road, because what we were told, there's going to be half a dozen cars over the weekend, and now 25 Porsches up and down the road, and the impact that the neighbors and will be duly listened to and respected. We need to have anything that relates to the impact on safety, welfare, and volume needs to be brought forward.
Or how are we going to demonstrate, what information is it that you want for the volume? Where's that going to come from?
Someone can put a counter out there.
Someone who? I
I don't know how VDOT does that, but I mean.
It's a private lane, so
It's a private lane, and you can take a picture of the parking lot every day and count how many cars are there or something.
I think the fact that it is now a winery can be used to, that obviously is going to have an increase in traffic. They are open from 12 to 5 every day according to the advertising. And so,
Right, and
on top of the B&B traffic, so VDOT has something to look at, which is a different aspect from what they were looking at previously, which was 3 bedrooms. Or 5
yeah,
bedrooms.
and the farm, what concerns me is that we have this farm lease agreement, which I haven't had a chance to look at. And then that no rentals of other spaces in structure or on property. That violates this, which is, of course, you have said that, and that is a concern to me, because we've got more than just bedrooms. We've got lots of space that's being used in a way that was not anticipated by us.
Well, before, I don't know, since we're discussing the motion, my question is what do you want to do about this?
I would like to have those transcribed for the next meeting.
Well, that's the question. I don't know how, I'm only getting paid $150 a meeting, so I'm not transcribing that whole thing. It's 2 discs and they're both full. I mean, it's like it's a meeting that went on as long as this one.
Do we have budget money for miscellaneous that we could have the sections for this transcribed out of through the office?
You'd have to give it to it like a court. Could you? I mean,
It costs money, but we can do it.
Are you going to pay for it?
Me,
Yeah.
me personally,
Well, no, your client's gonna pay.
that would be a discussion we would have to have.
Well, let's give them time to do whatever they want to do and decide on that, because somebody's going to, if you, either that or we're going to have to reproduce it and then you can put it in your computer and listen to it. But again, I think it should be in the record what was stated at the first meeting, because I can just tell you, after you listen to it, you'll have a different view of where we're at, I think. Because all these things, all these things were specifically discussed, including farm wineries and tastings and events like that. And they specifically, like I said, represented they wouldn't do that. And here they're not only doing it, they've got a lease that, I don't know what's the debate. They said they would, the condition is they wouldn't lease it. And even if they claimed, as they are claiming, that somehow the state law exempts them, they still have to come back before the Board of Zoning Appeals and say, look, we want out of condition 1 or 2 or whichever ones because we say we're exempt. And they didn't apply to modify the permit. And they're stuck with a permit that their predecessors in title or in whatever got, and they didn't modify it. They can't just come in and say, oh, well, the state law trumps your permit. No, it doesn't. Our ordinance, council, is valid until Judge Parker or some other judge sitting up there on that bench says, no, it's not. You can't just come in and say, oh, well, so this General Assembly passed something, and so all the conditions on previous, this was done when that was already there, and it was done not only by the BZA, but it was done at the suggestion and at the import of your predecessors in title or whatever, the applicants at the time that you inherited this very permit from. So I don't think that you can now just say, oh, well, we don't like the condition anymore, and now here's the state law that was already on the books, and so now we don't have to comply with it. I'm sorry, you have to come back and modify it or do something.
Now call for the question.
Okay, so let us have a vote that we will continue this.
Subject to those 3 things?
Subject to what we have talked about with health, safety, welfare.
All right, and the highway department, am I to write them and invite them? Or?
It seems,
okay.
I would like to interject this, that we are not here to redo the application. What we are here for is to decide whether or not there is a violation that needs punitive action.
And that's what we're continuing.
I don't think it's punitive action, it's just action.
Well,
And P.S., I'll tell you another thing, Mr. Berg. If you listen to the tape, Mr. Weinberg and Mr. McCarthy sat right at this table and specifically discussed what this 2-year thing meant and whether or not the permit was going to be reviewed or revoked.
we are
And that was supposed to be done.
The question we are here this evening to decide. We are here to decide whether the present owners are in violation of their special use permit to the point that it needs to be withdrawn. We are not here.
Revoked.
And we are,
Whatever.
and that's what we're voting on, to continue that discussion.
Well, it seems you are voting on researching the provenance of the permit of 7 years ago, 5 years before the present owners ever owned the property.
Wrong, they are the same owners that own the property.
It's the
The
same.
LLC owned it then and they own it now.
It's the owner.
That is a rather significant stretch.
That's not a stretch at all. What you're saying is a
Randall
stretch.
Kimberly Fort on the top of that.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When they bought it, they transferred it to an LLC, and it's been in the LLC ever since.
I feel that that is not being fair to the present owners.
But the present owners are the same owners who applied for the permit, and the same owners who, look at the second permit. Put that up. Wait a minute, put the second permit up. The second permit is to who?
It says right here, the name of the applicant is Harmony Manor B&B LLC.
And whose ownership has changed.
It had,
The owner, no, the ownership of the LLC perhaps, but the ownership of the property is in the name of Harmony Manor BV LLC.
and so is the deed. The deed that was here and before you, because you were on the board the second time, the deed that you reviewed said it wasn't Randall and Kimberly Ford, it was the B&B LLC, because the land was owned by them. And an application can only be made under the zoning ordinance by the owner or lessee, and it was the owner. So I don't know who Kimberly and Randall Fort, what they're doing on there. They weren't the owner. If that's the case, the whole permit's invalid to begin with, and void if it was issued to somebody who wasn't the owner. So you better be careful. That's kind of a double-edged sword you're swinging around there.
Well, and I did call for the question.
So the question is that we continue this.
We need to, actually, according to our rules and regs, we gotta write it, it's gotta be in writing.
That we continue,
Job of the secretary.
continue this, that we have information about
For the August meeting or the July meeting?
the next scheduled meeting. We can make it in August.
What?
In July, I guess it's July, follows this month.
All right. So one is the BDOT stuff
DOT,
for the interest.
um,
All right, two,
we need to have impact information about the amount of
the
volume.
volume of traffic. I don't know where that's coming from.
And then the other one.
The registration information
Mhm.
from you. You're gonna submit that? Whatever he said he had, a compilation of who stayed there since that way back, all the way to 2000 and from January 2012 to present. How many rooms have been rented?
And I think we need to have the transcripts there.
Okay, well, what, I mean, we never addressed how we're gonna do that.
And then the other thing
Wait a
was,
minute.
That doesn't have to be part of the motion, though. I think we can figure that out. That's administrative.
and then a better understanding of this farm lease agreement as it relates to this no event rentals of other spaces in structure or on property. So that's gonna have to be better explained.
Right.
Okay,
Because, I mean, we just kept getting these pieces of paper.
all right. Is there gonna be a deadline for submission?
If we have, maybe we can ask counsel over there if he thinks a reasonable time period to gather this information. Can you have it by our next meeting, which will be the fourth Wednesday of July, or would into August be easier?
Do we, the fourth Wednesday of July, how many days, I guess, do we have time to renotice the public hearing, or is the public hearing?
It's gonna be continued.
Continued, so this is the same.
We're gonna recess it, actually. That's the modification I would make. Well, let's not continue it. Let's recess it under the ordinance.
Public hearing's closed.
Well, we already had the
Open it,
public
close it.
hearing. So, right, I guess so.
I heard it was.
Well, Mike, there's another good question before you vote on your motion, because I think if there's gonna be additional information submitted by anybody, that the people, the neighbors and everybody ought to have an opportunity to look at it, and if they want to comment, they ought to be able to comment on it and submit their own information. And that's why I think we ought to give them a deadline by sometime in July, whatever they think is a reasonable time, 30 days, and then continue this to the August meeting, and let the neighbors and everybody, other interested parties have an opportunity to review it and do whatever they want to do.
So August will be the 28th, that's the fourth Wednesday. And so the information would be to,
So they have to put in their information by 30 days from now?
so that would be the 24th of July, that would be the fourth Wednesday of July.
All right.
So that's exactly 30 days.
Is that all right, council? Okay.
And then that would be to go to the
And then-
zoning office. And
Well,
then-
it'll come to me and I'll distribute it and come to a copy to the zoning office and then, any of these interested parties can contact either me or Michelle and let us know if you want to see it, and I'll distribute it to whoever wants it. And, and then we'll reconvene in August. So you want me to reread that whole thing again? The motion on the floor is to continue this matter for further discussion and deliberation to the August meeting. And during that time, we're going to get input from VDOT about the entrance, information from whoever wants to submit it about the volume of traffic. The applicants are required to submit the registration information of how many rooms were rented out since the inception of the permit on January, I believe, 26, 2012 to the present. How many rooms, including but not limited to how many rooms were rented out on any given night or nights. 4, we're going to have a transcript made of the January 2012 BZA meeting from this disc. 5th, we're going to have further input on
The
on the
lease.
farm lease,
And the- and
well, I'm reading it, and how that does or does not conflict with the condition in the permit. And,
So Sam, can we add one thing to 3, is that any events that were held on the property, not room rented.
okay. So it's rooms and events
Right.
that were held on the property.
The events is easy. None.
What about the portion?
That's a tasting.
May I speak? For this case?
No,
Okay.
it's closed.
Only they can talk. You're just a mere landowner.
Yeah.
Rappahannock.
Okay, yes.
Can we specify what 3 was, just so we're aware?
The registration records should be made available, or summarize, whatever you want to put in. If you want to summarize them and put in the records so we can, anybody can look at them if they want to, I want those made available from January 2012.
I'll give you all that I have. I'm sure how
And
many we have.
events that either the Forts had.
And events.
Forts had or they
And
had.
events that the Forts had or that they had, because obviously there were some Porsche events that were before the winery permit was issued, so. Okay, that's it. That's the motion, now you gotta vote.
Okay, so, all in favor of this motion, say aye.
I'll vote aye, just because I just want to say that I'm voting aye, but only because that's the only alternative left, since we're apparently not going to vote on revoking it right now.
Days
Abstain.
and 1 abstain. So 3 ayes and 1 abstain.
Okay.
So we move on our agenda. Anybody can stay or you want?
Is it really 10 o'clock?
It is.
I will make
Give me
a,
a moment.
okay, I'm going to make a motion that we delay the minutes and the other items.
Well, the minutes I checked through and I found them accurate as circulated, no typos.
Oh, okay.
So the minutes are approved as circulated.
Oh, okay.
Okay, somebody needs to make a motion.
I make a motion that we
Yes.
approve the minutes from the May meeting.
Okay. Is there a motion that we adjourn?
And the other things are all deferred?
Motion to adjourn.
And so you defer to the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I only have, only have the, is it 3 new?